What you working on today?
Cummins X15, we've got after-treatment issues.
Okay, what kind of codes are you dealing with?
We've got soot level data valid but above normal. The DPF delta pressure sensor, which measures the input pressure and the outlet pressure of the matrix, sees valid voltage, but it doesn't like the readings, thinks that it's restricted.
Okay. Were you able to confirm that restriction?
Not entirely. These X15s are a little bit tricky with their DPF restriction test. You have to perform a full DPF park regen before you do it, and then it will learn the ash value and the actual matrix restriction with no soot in it.
So when it comes to the X15 power plant, is there anything sensor-wise that could be considered a maintenance item?
Yeah, so typically when I approach an after-treatment issue, the most important thing is to identify the power plant you're working on, of course. In this case, X15 Cummins, like I said. So I'll connect with Cummins Insight, and we can see our active and inactive fault codes here. And then something I like to look at is the freeze frame data, which actually captures other engine sensor data at the time of the fault, which can be really helpful in looking for either the operating conditions in which it happened, if it's high load, city driving, when the engine was cold. And I'll often go and look at live data and just scroll through every single parameter and look for something that's drifted, pressure sensor, temperature. If it's a cold soaked engine, that's really helpful. You can look at, there are about 7 exhaust temperature sensors. You've got intake manifold temperature, coolant temperature, oil temperature, and just compare all of those and just a relative, are they within a few degrees of each other? Can be really helpful for looking at something that's drifted that could be causing poor combustion, thus high soot load, or a poor regen efficiency or DOC performance code. Same thing with pressures, look for variance between similar sensors. Some of them will be absolute pressure, some of them will be relative. So in this case, you can look at barometric pressure is about 25 inches of mercury. So I can look at exhaust gas pressure and see that it's 26.6 inches of mercury. So pretty close, within 0.5%, 0.4%. That's one of the first things I look at when I'm getting an overall view. As with almost any issue, I check the basics. That's what my old foreman used to say, check the vitals. Engine oil, coolant, see if there's any major leaks. If you've got a big puddle underneath, that could always be leading to after treatment issues. Check your hose clamps, things like that. Just like the human body, it's all connected. You have a cramp in your leg, maybe your stomach is gonna hurt, whatever.
In regards to the X15 power plant, is there anything that's common maintenance-wise that could be potential issues down the road for after treatment?
Yeah, so the most common issue that I see on these as a sort of maintenance item where it doesn't display a fault code would be the manifold absolute pressure sensor. They just get full of soot. So almost every time I get them in the shop, even if the engine is not complaining about it, I'll pull it and clean it with a carb cleaner, or in some cases replace it, because they're plumbed into the intake manifold right after the EGR crossover. So it just gets soot and a horrible hydrocarbon goop in there that just gets plugged up in that diaphragm, and you'll get delayed manifold pressure readings, so you get poor combustion.
So just because we have a delta pressure sensor problem doesn't mean that that's really what caused the issue, right?
That's absolutely right. In most cases, an after-treatment issue will be caused by something upstream. It's always possible that there's a catalyst issue, a sensor issue, hydrocarbon doser that's clogged, exhaust leaks, things like that. But in most cases, you have to take your eyes away from the after-treatment system and look at what's feeding it and what it's actually taking care of. Because if you have an engine that is producing excess soot and running horribly, you're going to get after-treatment codes, but maybe not engine performance codes. And you might go insane looking at after-treatment when really you've got a plugged up map sensor and you've got CAC boot clamps that are torn, VGT that's sticking.
So on this specific truck, what did you end up finding to be the issue?
So I found the EGR delta pressure sensor was actually drifted low. So key on, engine off, I was reading minus 0.2 inches of mercury. With this drifted low data, after verifying the delta pressure reports were okay, 5-volt reference, ground, and signal wire were good, that's going to cause excess EGR flow, which is going to impede our combustion, and perhaps that's why our delta pressure in the DPF is abnormal. In this case, since it's Cummins, I have many parts from these engines because they're one of the most common engines in the world. So after doing those basic circuit checks, I just plugged in a known good sensor, saw that my delta pressure was much closer to 0. In fact, you can see 0.023 inches of mercury, and that condemns the sensor as faulty. Even though it looks quite new, just because it's new does not mean it's good. Those are words to live by.
Is it your win on nationals to do with all of your pocket items, all of your?
Oh, you know, these are highly calibrated utensils for engine diagnostics. It's definitely a contributing factor, because what if you drop your pocket screwdriver, then you've got your magnet here.
Wow.